There's a vast amount of racism in American film, but this might be one of the most racist films we've done.
No, the religion is actually just manipulating people and leading people into unjust wars for no good reason other than keep the rich rich. Whoa, man, mind blown.
But you're not thinking like a capitalist there.
I'm not. That's always been my problem.
It's a nice liberal nationalist movie where the president can go blow up aliens with a jet fighter, and yet you're still not actually being xenophobic. It's kind of amazing.
The whole QAnon universe, I was like, this seems ripe for them to grab onto one of these two movies and totally miss the point.
Yes.
And they have.
You know, the best they really have is like gentrification and real estate speculation in hospitals.
Yeah, that's Cleveland in a nutshell right there.
Fuck capitalism. Fuck all of this stuff. It is a movie that should be watched by organizers and radicals and leftists and anybody who wants to make a better world. This movie, on the other hand, means none of those things.
It's a Franken blockbuster, like you said, and it's put together in sequences that play out like movie trailers.
Really regressive gender politics, like incredible, but to the point of near parody.
No, Norm, George Wendt in this movie definitely would have been wearing a MAGA hat if this movie was made nowadays.
Oh, God, right? And then convince the workers to break their own picket.
Yeah.
Fuck this movie. It's,
Damn, I wish this movie was better, because that's a kick-ass ending.
This is a paint-by-numbers propaganda movie that completely works because the characters are compelling and real.
Welcome all to the Politics of Cinema. On this show, we believe films are never neutral. There's a political as well as artistic message captured in every film, in every country, in every time period. We are on the lookout for all of it. My name is Aaron Spears.
And my name is Isaac Miller. On this episode, we're continuing our look at contemporary film with Natalie Morales' Plan B. So it should be said that this episode was supposed to come out in January. I want to apologize. I mean, February we sort of blocked off for Black History Month, but this is probably going to come out in February. This is the wages of grad school, unfortunately.
Also, I'm really glad. I think we're going to move on from contemporary cinema here shortly, but this one I was not as begrudgingly watching as I was the last couple of contemporary ones. I feel like this show has dragged me into contemporary watching, which I'm glad for, because I've got some good stuff out of my system and was able to watch some good films. I think this particular film, Plan B, is the one I've enjoyed the most of our contemporary focus of recently.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, to be honest, want to do some more contemporary stuff, but I think we can filter in some more. I think this was definitely the funnest contemporary movie we did. I mean, the last one we did was a comedy, but it was also really depressing.
Yeah. That was the first thing I typed in the notes of this one was like, okay, finally, yes, a comedy. I laughed a lot and really enjoyed myself watching this one.
And then the previous two were about really grim shit. I mean, I think there are some more contemporary stuff I want to filter through over the next few months, but yes, I think I think this is the one where we actually, don't have to cry afterwards.
I did tear up, but not because I was sad or depressed. I was just I was happy.
Did you?
We'll get there. Yeah.
Did you have a dad moment during this movie?
Oh, I had a lot of dad moments during this movie.
Okay, so I mean, I think Plan B is really good, as we will talk about, but I imagine this hit you differently.
A bit, but yeah, we will get there. No, there's such a great bit of on-screen chemistry between Lupe and Sonny that there's a point where you really understand their actual connection as friends, that I thought was just so perfectly sincere. And yeah, it was a couple of tears of joy. It was I'm just happy that, I mean, it's a fictional film, I get it, but I was just I'm just happy the support you get when you have a true close best friend is touching.
Yeah, it's good. Should we just explain what this movie is about before we and give a little context before we launch into this? Because I think we want to talk about this movie.
So Plan B is one of two films that Natalie Morales directed this calendar year, which is her debut year. She did this one, and then she did another one called Language Lessons.
Debut as a director. She's
an actor. Yeah. Actor for quite a while, actually. I'm not terribly familiar with her acting work, but I'm a huge fan of her directing work so far this year. Plan B, as the title suggests, revolves around procuring the Plan B pill. So after a regrettable first sexual encounter, a straight-laced high school student and her slacker best friend have 24 hours to hunt down a Plan B pill in America's heartland. That's the IMDb Letterboxd description of it. I liked how her slacker best friend is really just like, it's the stoner character. I don't know why we're not just saying stoner. That's usually, I guess if it was a 90s film, that's how they would describe this character, but fine. And in America's heartland, in this particular case, they mean South Dakota.
Right.
Right now, puberty is telling you to step on the gas.
If your vagina was a car, what would it be? Ferrari.
It stays covered up and completely untouched in the garage.
Mine would definitely be a Transformer. You think you know her? Boom. Autobots pop out.
I feel like if you're following the metaphor, that means you have crabs.
What?
We finally tried reverse cowgirl.
And amazing, right? It wasn't that great for me, but I feel like it looked cool.
Girls are horse fucking and I haven't even had my first kiss. Oh fuck, look at Hunter. Who plays hockey in a cardigan? He's like an athletic librarian.
You know, Sunny's throwing a party.
Really?
Love a good high school party with the liquors and the touching, all the other stuff, drugs.
Big night for you. Inviting your crush?
Partying and drinking. I feel so stimulated. Is this what white privilege feels like?
Hey, good choices.
Oh, fuck.
Lupe?
I had sex.
What?
You banged your crush at your own party? You are my hero.
Oh god, I was peeing and a condom fell out.
What?
A condom full of goo.
Let's get the Plan B pill.
Is there an alternative?
You mean a Plan B?
Sorry, but I decline to offer you the Plan B pill. Have a nice day.
Let's go to Planned Parenthood in Rapid City. Hey, do you realize this is our first official road trip?
Where are we on here?
What do these red lines mean?
It needs a pension zone.
I hate to tell you, but Planned Parenthood is probably closed for the night.
My 24-hour window is closing.
So the condom just fell out? I've been there.
Place has a lot to do with this movie.
Very
right?
much so.
I mean, part of this is part of the trend of sort of either trying to get abortions or trying to get, some sort of healthcare specific to women's reproductive healthcare, basically, in parts of the country where that's increasingly difficult to get. Right. So this, as a subgenre, this is inherently deeply political right off the bat.
Yeah.
Having two leads who are women of color in what seems like a very white background. So like part of it is there's a few moments of actual dread for me. So what this means is it's a road trip, right? Because they have to drive to the big city to get Plan B because they can't get Plan B because the
local pharmacist invokes the moral clause, so he can't hand it to her.
He can't hand it to her.
And in an interesting bit of casting, though, too, it's a member of her Indian community.
Right.
I mean, star here, Sunny. So like, oh shit, this guy, he knows my mom. He knows, oh crap. And she even mentions at some point the Indian mafia is how she calls it, which is great because it's a throwaway joke, but it ends up coming back at the end. You're like, that is a great payoff. That's a great payoff. That's a great setup to a great joke.
Right. And so part of it is like, Sunny is Indian American, Lupe is Latinx, and they both have sort of their own issues at home.
Yeah, Lupe is a single dad with, some brothers.
Who's also a pastor and who is sort of moralizing and very much trying to sort of control her every move.
Yeah, very like overprotective dad of a teenage girl. And then Sunny is a only child, but then also is being raised by a single mother. So they've got one of each when you put the two friends together. One of them's got a dad, one of them's got a mom. So
like, they sort of have, in some ways, they both have issues around expectations of conformity by their respective parent. I mean, actually, in some ways, very similar, but one in terms of great expectations, the other one in terms of behavior, but both of them for behavior. And they're sort of, I mean, they aren't the only people of color in this place. There's multiple in this part of the country that they're, or as they travel through, but overwhelmingly. And so there's like a low hum of racism throughout the film, or sometimes a high hum. There are actual moments in this movie when they're on the road trip where I felt a little bit of dread.
I was going to ask you about that. I don't know if you wanted to just jump right into that part or not.
I'm kind of jumping in. Yeah.
Since it's a road trip, it's vignettes. It's a series of great comic vignettes as they go out on this road trip. They throw, well, I have a kind of bullet point. Let's just walk right through it. So like they throw a party because Sonny's mom is out of town at a real estate convention or whatever. So, they're teenagers. They throw a party and Lupe convinces Sonny to invite her crush, Hunter, to the party because, hey, you can finally hook up with Hunter.
Well, they actually do the party. Basically, Lupe convinces Sonny to say that she's having a party to hang out with her crush. She's not going to have a party before that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So the entire idea of having a party is totally based on this. It was not something she would have done normally.
So this movie really hooked me right away because Sonny describes Hunter in one of their very first opening scenes as an athletic librarian because he's wearing a cardigan while playing floor hockey in gym class. And that warmed my heart because that's a stereotype you don't see ever out there in movies. But the low hum, maybe this is one of the high hum incidents when people are arriving at the party. Like it's clearly clear Sonny has not hosted a party for, basically the school's invited. Essentially, this is not quite like full like suburban South Dakota. It seems a little bit more of like a small town kind of vibe to me.
Small town-ish,
yeah. So I don't imagine this is like 2,000 kids attending this high school sort of thing. So a large swath of the student body that you've already seen in the hallways, that you've seen in some of the classes, are at this party. One kid walks in the door and says, "Oh, I expected it to smell like curry," or something to that effect. Where I was like, "Is that medium hum? Maybe I don't know." Like,
so is this a microaggression or is it an aggression? Is it like an unintentional faux pas, or is it like a slur? And I think it's actually closer to the latter, frankly. Mm-hmm. That's just it. Is
blunt, like high school kind of way. I thought where either you're saying it to be shocking or
I don't think that's being said to being shocking. This is the complexity of it. Is they are outcasts in a classic teen movie sense, but part of it is by the racial dynamic brings out whole other layers of that, right? Because they're, this isn't, it's not book smart, right? Like, so part of it is I think that is supposed to be very deliberate. I think it is. I think it's like, there's possibility of ignorance, but like it's people are mean to them at her. People are mean to her at her own party.
Right, for sure. Or you experience like kind of the classroom dynamics too. There's like a locker room scene that the girls are in together, and then you overhear, the snotty, white girl cheerleader movie stereotype there too. So yeah, it's pretty clear they're not part of the quote unquote cool kids, kind of group here. But it also as they're going through all the party setup and the party itself, you're starting to see this great groundwork laid for a great like best friend dynamic between Sonny and Lupe, which is great because that immediately has to pay off with like the first plot point when the plot kicks into gear post party. Sonny realizes the condom didn't work and oh shit, I might get pregnant.
So part of what's part of it is she ends up, her crush leaves with somebody else. She's crushed.
Oh, the snotty cheerleader I just mentioned, actually.
Yeah, with the snotty cheerleader. So this looks like a classic setup, right? This is the sort of thing you sort of expect from a teen movie. And she ends up hooking up with the Christian kid.
Kyle.
Kyle, the incredibly awkward Christian kid. I think part of it is like this, the dynamic. This is like Booksmart. Like this has a few more of sort of your classic teen movie tropes, but we've left them behind, right? Like this is a different era of teen movie. Mm-hmm. And, that's everything from basically the 70s to the early 2000s. Like we're not in that era anymore. And he's sort of like, he's not an interesting character. Well, he is kind of an interesting character. He's not actually a stereotype that exists, but he's one that fits. Part of it is such a place. This feels like such a place specific film, and he fits there.
Right.
Obviously, religiously for him, having sex is whatever, but it's also what's good about this totally meaningless sex, and it's very openly stated. Like there's no emotional attachment here, and there isn't supposed to be.
Yeah, she just wants to not be a virgin.
Right. And and feel so
again
feel
classic teen setup. And I don't mean that in like it's leaning into stereotypes. Like it's I think it's beautifully kind of not reinventing, but it's just like it's beautifully playing with all the tropes you'd expect from a teen comedy.
Right. But I think it's rewiring them. So like with race, with sort of his sort of evangelical background and how that sort of plays into his dynamic around it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just another nerdy kid, right? He's actually very confused about what he did because of that, because of sort of his religious background.
I think that one of the descriptions I read, I don't know if it was Wikipedia or somewhere, like described him as like an eccentric Christian, which like it wasn't eccentric in his Christianity. He was just kind of like an odd character. I thought he was playing like the stereotype of like the gay theater nerd at their high school at first, and I was like, oh, okay, you're going Christian here. Okay, got it. Okay, because like he just has enough quirks that it's not annoying you, but like it's a memorable character because he's got some quirks.
Right. Well, he's socially awkward as they are, but for different reasons.
Right.
Which is that he can only talk about trying to get you to go to his church, and
right.
and latches onto seems to latch onto them.
Yeah. Right. So that kicks off the plot. The need for the pill was like, hey, we got to go get this, and that's what he said. We mentioned the they go to the pharmacy, the moral clause. The pharmacist invokes the moral clause. Jay from Broken Lizard pops up. You're like, oh, well, this guy's. I was assuming going to be funny because he's always funny, but like it's a okay part. He does exactly what he needs to do in the scene. He refuses it on moral grounds, and then they're like, well, shit, okay. And then our road trip plot really kicks into gear as they head to the nearest Planned Parenthood. I want to say they said like Sioux City or Sioux Falls, or I
actually can't even remember.
I don't remember the geography of North Dakota that well. Right. And again, you're starting to see, you're seeing like, hey, this is a friend who's there for their other friend. Like these two clearly have a history. We get to know a little bit more they reminisce a little bit about this time in their life or that time in their life. They even put on a Christian rap song comes on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them like knows all the lyrics to it, and then great jump cut editing to like now they're both singing along by the time the last chorus comes on, and they're having a good old time.
Well, part of it, Lupe. So it's Lupe knows all the words, and part of it is she's the daughter of a pastor.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So part of it is, I mean, she's not actually into any of that stuff.
She's around it,
but she's around it, and so it's. I love that because I love it because it's a bit of texture, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit of texture both for the character and for the play setting, right? Like this is what's on the radio. Obviously, you can get Christian programming anywhere, but it's also just sort of the normalized part of like the environment that they're in.
Right. You're right. Yeah, because she makes a comment how like, yeah, there's there's some good Christian trap music out there or something that I was like, you're right. It speaks to like, the full world that this character lives in.
Right.
I don't know how much you want to just go like through a couple of the scenes on the road trip here.
Yeah, and I do want to get. I mean, I mentioned the dread. I want to get to the dread, not to make this really, really funny comedy not seem like it's really, really funny comedy, because even that scene, honestly, like is really funny.
So we get the kind of obligatory but very well done. Like you hit the road with your friend. There's going to be music and Christian trap. It spurs on a funny conversation. They start singing along together, and like you said, it speaks to a bigger world that Lupe lives in. Problem is, they get out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and you don't have cell service, or I think their GPS starts telling them to go two different directions, or is confused, and they end up lost. Classic scene of road trip. Now you're lost. Now you have to go to a convenience store, a gas station somewhere. And
they even try to use a paper map.
Oh my god, that's right. That part was so funny, and they have no idea how to read it. It's almost as if the first time they're looking at a paper map in their life, which is good comedy.
Yeah, no, so part of it is that could feel much cheaper. Look at these Zoomers who can't even, use a map. But it doesn't really land that way. Like the tone is handled so nicely that it's actually just funny.
You're right.
And then, so they go to the, to this convenience store, which is like honestly one of the. There's a lot of funny scenes in the movie, but it's like this is an incredibly funny scene in the movie. But it's also the one with the most dread, because when they get out, there's a couple of drunk good old boys who are catcalling them, and part of it is from the beginning. I mean, it's very explicit, right? This is an R-rated, raunchy, like teen comedy movie. There's going to be some dude full frontal, though that's not real. But like part of, not in that scene. But part of it is that it's both a gender threat that actually feels real. Like it's very uncomfortable. You are in this parking lot. There's no one else there.
Yeah.
And these guys are there and they're drunk. Like that's very real, for like, there's like a very real experience, but then part of it is racial slurs are like immediate.
Oh yeah.
So the cat calling is always racialized. So it's like kind of intense. But they go into the convenience store, and the teller is a woman who's has a tragic story about her husband getting. I mean, it's funny.
She tells it like this deadpan, just like nonchalant way that we're like, oh Jesus, what's going on here? Yeah, and also Lupe steals. She shoplifts from the store, so that is there. And also they mentioned the predicament they're in too. That's why the whole story comes up. So she mentions that hey, I know a guy, a drug dealer who works at a nearby playground. I'll give you directions. He can sell you some birth control.
Well, so part of part of it, I guess, we don't need to go blow by blow through every scene, but I guess part of it is when she steals a twin friend necklace for them to have together, which Sonny does not realize is stolen. And when they get out there, those two guys basically are functionally threatening physical violence, and they're only saved from an ugly situation by the woman who works in the store coming out with a baseball bat and breaking those guys' windows, helping them out, and not reporting them for mom. Yeah, basically telling them, I'm going to tell your mom. So this is more of the place setting, right? Like this is small town America. Everybody knows everybody. But basically is willing to not get them in trouble for shoplifting if they allow her to use Lupe's like her vape. Yeah, her weed vape.
Yeah,
and that's where they get to her drug dealing nephew. So it's like it's all this sort of like decaying rural America stuff. I mean, it's very much like 2021 like disaster America in a lot of ways, but really funny. But really, I know we're not describing these scenes as that funny.
Well, that's true too. But there's also like a shared experience. She recognized what was going on in the parking lot. She's like, God damn, because she's put up with these. This is not the first time she's run into these drunk assholes. I'm sure they've bothered her before. So she comes out with a bat. But it's also, like I said earlier, like each one of these, when you the structure of a road trip movie is the vignettes. And so as they go from like situation to situation, you could do like show up, easy jokes, and then you're gone or whatever. But there's actually like these little, one of your favorites, Isaac, there's like these little character arcs to each scene, each interaction they have at every stop they have here, where it goes from just a functional stop to get some directions and maybe something to eat or drink or whatever, some snacks for the road. And the stealing of like the best friend's pendants that she has, and like the way that pays off by just hanging out with this lady, and the lady just empties the vape pen while they're talking about it. Like it all helps everything feel very real and gives the whole scene. It's maybe like 5 to 7 minutes long, but like it has a whole full feel to it because also it's unfolding organically, but there's also a full payoff at each step of the way too.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost, I don't know if this is true. I wonder, and as we sort of go through the rest of the movie, everything feels very real. And I wonder if it's the fact that this is a very, very low budget movie means that like you're not doing this somewhere. I wonder if the set design is helped by where you shot it. I have no idea if that's true.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
It's like, that bowling alley looks exactly like what you'd expect.
It's good. I mean, it's good location scouting, or I don't know how autobiographical it is. The two screenwriters, I just looked up their credits. I don't know what I haven't looked up any interviews with them to know like, oh yeah, this was, something I heard about or experienced or whatever, but it feels real.
It feels textured in a way that like, this is things that people know.
Right. It got it right. Yeah, because if it's a Hollywood production, like, oh, we need a bowling alley, you just like, oh, let's go to East LA or whatever, like film a bowling alley. It's like, no, this looks like the bowling alley you find when you're like lost on a highway and you pull off asking for directions.
I mean, it's both of their first movies. Like this is it. This is their first movies.
Oh yeah, the first film. They write a lot of TV. They worked at the CW together for quite a while.
That makes sense.
On iZombie and Titans. So it's interesting because that's, you know, genre TV, and now like this very kind of based in reality realism kind of comedy is really interesting. So yeah, we don't necessarily go scene by scenes, but yeah, so they follow her up on meeting like the drug dealer nephew or whatever at the local playground, and he is there, which is really just a setup for. It's kind of a MacGuffin sort of thing, or not a MacGuffin. That's not the right word, but like Chekhov's gun, but it's not a gun; it's a pill. He's like, it's Plan B. There's like a 10% chance it might be PCP. You know, so it's like, okay, well, we know what scene might be coming up. If she gets desperate enough and tries this, she's going to be tripping balls, and that's going to be hilarious,
right?
Because if it's actually the right pill, like that doesn't further any plot or comedy,
right?
So yeah, so now they're in possession of like, it's almost like they got a safety net. Like, okay, well, if all else fails, I got this pill I could take, but I don't know if it's going to work or not.
And so then they end up detouring. So part of it is, you know, you end up with a detour. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the romantic dynamics in this. I'm going to put up a spoiler alert for this part.
I was just thinking about that. It plays out through the whole rest of the movie, though.
Yeah, it does. So
if you're worried about it, you just kind of have to stop listening now, because it's not like the reveal of a at the end of a murder mystery or anything. It's a character piece that I actually personally don't think it's a spoiler. It depends on the brain of the person watching the movie, though. Like if my mom was watching this movie, I think it would be a spoiler for her because she would be like, "Oh." I was like, I don't know. I kind of saw this coming, but whatever.
Right. Exactly. Like we all sort of saw this coming. But so part of it is that they end up going to this bowling alley where they run into Sonny's crush who's there. So Sonny gets to like part of it, Sonny has lied to Lupe saying that the person that she slept with, or that, you know, she had her first time with, was her crush, which it was not. And Lupe has been lying about, or not revealing who her actual, the person who she's been sort of like in a long distance relationship, or sort of basically an online relationship where they haven't actually met yet.
Right. Logan.
So they go to this person's show, which is at the bowling alley. And
actually, Isaac, you're right. 'Cause I don't think we set that up properly as we were kind of talking this through, because there is this there's a dual secrets that are going on in the movie between these two best friends that they don't know.
Right.
So yeah, so Sonny lets Lupe believe that she actually had sex with Hunter, her crush, even though he left with the snotty cheerleader early on in the party. So this whole time, Lupe is under the impression that, you know, Sonny and Hunter hooked up, and Hunter is at this concert. Well, concert's a strong word. This performance in a bowling alley.
I mean, I think, you know, part of it is that both of them are driven by their own internal insecurities, including vis-a-vis each other.
Well, they're teens. They're figuring this shit out.
Right. And then part of the part of their arc is to come out with all this stuff and actually be able to reveal, be vulnerable with each other.
Yeah,
be themselves.
Yeah.
And be vulnerable with each other and everyone else around them.
Which, you know, when that scene happens, some people get a little misty-eyed.
Some people do, and I don't blame those people because it's well acted and it's been built really well through the whole film, and it's just like, God damn, friendship is beautiful.
But it kind of, at this midpoint of the movie, it comes together at this band performance at the bowling alley because Hunter is there. And so now Sonny's in a situation where she's there with her best friend looking for her best friend's crush, and now she has to deal with the fact that her best friend thinks she's already started a relationship with Hunter, her crush, the athletic librarian, who's also at the performance.
One of the things I actually appreciate is they don't spend a lot of time on that, as in you could do a lot of awkward jokes off of that particular dynamic, but they basically...
Situation comedies are built around this kind of setup.
Right. Yeah. But the thing is like, we've seen that before a lot, so they sort of just break them up right there so they can deal with their separate romantic relationships and bring them to a fore before bringing them back together.
Right. It's like, oh, I'll leave you to it. Oh my God, he's here. Yeah. Okay. Well, you go be with your new boy.
Yeah.
That's your new partner here.
Which is exactly how actual people would act in this sort of situation, as opposed to like hijinks the whole time. And I just appreciated that. Also, my biggest difficulty in films is awkwardness. Whew. Teen comedies are rough.
Yeah, they can be.
But so like, let's just do Sonny's dynamic is basically that Hunter is a really sweet guy and she ends up breaking down. They go and get some food, and she ends up breaking down and explaining actually what happens. And he says, that is totally fine. You're a human being. We have pointless hookups sometimes. If you need me for anything, let me know. I'm going to talk to you. Yeah.
And you get to that backstory too of like how he's always been intimidated by her, but he clearly like has feelings for her. But it was like, you're the super smart girl who like I can't talk to. Like you're out of like in his mind. It was like, you're out of my league.
So I'm going to ask you a question as somebody who works with teens and has them more in your life.
Yes.
This is not a critique of the film so much, but he is actually too perfect.
I don't know. See, I was falling for Hunter the whole time.
Fair enough.
Like I think it was the right chemistry where I was like, oh my God, yeah, that you two are perfect for each other. But yeah, I guess I could see that. Like you need, well, at this point in the movie though, you still think he left with the snotty cheerleader.
Well, but he explains when they're eating.
Up to this point. So he had like a flaw.
You thought that, yeah. He had a flaw. It turns out he's not. It turns out he had a crush on her, which actually makes sense with the dynamic that you see previously. Like,
right. That's why it works really great because up until then you've been with Sunny experiencing all these emotions, and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, like and you experience through her eyes, and then once this happens, you're like, wait a minute, I can revisit all of the scenes I've already seen, and everything that Hunter is saying now is like, yeah, that's true, that was there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Interpreting it, yeah.
So like that works out well. She's got like a relationship to go to no matter how the plan B quest goes. He's sort of modeling, 2020s teen masculinity at an ideal point. So like he's understanding, he's sex positive. Yeah. He's not, he doesn't have the vast hangups that are sort of like you would have seen in decades of teen movies. Right. A lot of people in the high school do, but, we don't really need them, right? Like we those are tensions in the film, but you don't actually need your lead to have like weird types of like hang-ups, or you're not your lead, your romantic object for the lead, because he's not even close to
the romantic interest of your lead,
right?
But also,
meanwhile,
I was going to say, but I think you need that as the romantic interest because you want to root for those relationships to work. And if you give him like some awkward flaws, or if he's the weird Christian guy, you're like, no, that doesn't really work. Yeah. Like this one, you're like, yes, it's clear and it works, and they click. Like this scene, like there's chemistry. I mean, in the acting, obviously. Between Sunny and Hunter, and then you're like, I'm immediately cheering for this couple to stick together after like one scene at a diner.
Well, I think part of it is it's the tonal choices of the film, because there's different ways of doing a teen movie, right? And this is a movie that has enough sort of like quote real texture to it that you could actually make that situation more complicated, and it would be a different type of teen movie, but it would be a real one, right? It would be, but part of it is they're still situating it within the traditional teen movie genre, just in an updated form. In that case, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's fun, and that's why we enjoy it. Yeah. So you actually don't need that tension there. And to be honest, it could be very artificial tension if you do it badly. Right. So like, don't do it.
It's also one of those, like you're watching a teen road comedy. This scene doesn't have to be packed full of like laughter. Granted, he's like fake talking to her through his pancake.
Yes.
To kick it off. Fine. And it works. He's just, he's being goofy. He's trying to cut the tension or whatever. But it works really well, but they're not trying to overtly make this slapsticky or whatever. It's that heartfelt scene in between, overtly comedic or more slapsticky stuff.
Well, I mean, that just adds to how ridiculously cute he is, right? Like, right. I mean, that's the thing. He's just super charming.
Yes. So this scene at the diner is contrast with Lupe's scene with Logan, which I think is really well done. Like they both are with their, potential romantic others, and it's like it's a back-to-back scenes here.
So Logan's not a dude.
No, Logan is not.
So that's what hasn't basically Lupe has not revealed to her best friend that she's queer, and that the person that she's trying to start a relationship, like this is the first time they're actually meeting in person, is a woman. So like basically, that's off the bat. I think that scene is really well handled. They're both, they sort of handle the sort of different dynamics of coming out, right? So whereas, Logan has been kicked out of her home by her parents, and so basically lives with her band. Right. And Lupe basically is too afraid to actually say anything, right, and to be open, and it doesn't know how to come out. And is with her family is basically asking,
right? And also you're getting a response of just like, oh God, that sounds terrible. So like that's your worst fears. So as a teen, Lupe here now is like, oh shit, like the setup is like, is that going to happen to me? And the only thing we've seen of Lupe's family, specifically her father, is like this kind of overbearing dad who wants her to live by the rules because he's this overprotective single dad,
right?
So, and then also you have the religious thing mixed in there too, where it's like, oh shit, like there's potential for will that happen to her if she comes out? So the contrast of the diner scene is now Lupe and Logan. They're just smoking weed in the back of the van and connecting, and you can tell like they have a history because they've been chatting via text and online, and so it's not like an awkward first meeting. It falls right into kind of a warm, comfortable hug, like right away.
I think it gets that dynamic of we actually haven't met I don't think they've met in person, right? That's the idea.
I don't think so, no.
So it gets that dynamic of we've talked a lot, but we haven't actually met really well, right? Like you get that sort of that vibe of like we know each other, but we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So which is like which is a very specific kind of like modern vibe. And I think it just captures that really nicely.
It does. But now we have the dueling secrets. Now we have, we've known Sunny's secret that she's holding from Lupe, which is like, I actually slept with Kyle the Christian, not, my crush Hunter. But now you've got Lupe is like, well, I haven't told like my closest best friend in the world that I'm queer and I'm still in the closet, which I find interesting as one of the aspects of this movie, the genre, especially like in teen comedies, that the way it has shifted since like, I'm going to say like the 90s till now, if you look at like queer cinema history, the fact that it's a movie that doesn't revolve around will they or won't they come out and how will that affect things. It's just like it's there and it can be part of the plot, but it isn't like this is the plot of the movie. But it's interesting because it acknowledges that like this is still a huge personal thing that happens in people's lives.
But it involves a lot of risk, like even physical risk.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not the only obstacle they're overcoming. It's just one of the many things a teenager in this situation would be dealing with.
Right. And I think it's a very intentional. I mean, all of these scenes feel like they're, and I mean this as a compliment, like very intentionally thought through. Right.
Oh yeah.
But that's also a dynamic that's very intentionally thought through because it's set right now, in which these things would be, they're just so much more normalized, right? Like it's 10 years ago, you wouldn't have played that scene this way.
No, it would have had to been the plot.
It would have had to been the plot.
Yeah. So, there's some progress as far as screenwriting goes, I think.
But it would also, at this point, you expect it, right? Like it would just be normal. Like it's going to be there and it's not just going to be background.
Right. Well, so actually we mentioned earlier, like, the movie, now that I'm thinking about it, does actually treat it as a reveal to the audience that Logan is the drummer and that Logan's the woman. Because as Lupe goes up front to watch the band, as your eyes naturally do if you're watching a live band perform, it goes to the lead singer, which is a guy.
Right.
And so the way that editing is, it does make it seem like Lupe is looking at the guy. I went back and rewatched, actually, I ended up almost rewatching the whole movie because it's hilarious and I was really enjoying it. The shots do include Logan. So if you know what you're looking for because you know the story, but it's not like the editing is not telling you, hey, I'm looking at the drummer, which is what Logan plays. So I guess the film does kind of set it up as a reveal once she walks up and starts talking to Logan, who's the drummer. But it doesn't, like, the music doesn't swell or like, dun, 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 oh my gosh, this is a reveal. It's just like, this is who she came to talk to and came to hang out with.
Right. So more hijinks ensue.
I should say too, yeah, the van that they've been in is the one that Sunny took from her mom. Like they peel off her real estate, car magnet off the side of the van. Or no, actually, I don't know. It's like pinned on the window.
Yeah, they don't peel it off.
Like they peel off something, I thought, but like, yeah, it's still like on the window and all that. So like it's Sunny's mom's work car that they're driving. And so as Lupe and Sunny hook back up in the parking lot, the van is missing. And the person that was in the van was Logan. So it immediately feels like a betrayal. where, Lupe just finally met up with their crush. They made out, they shared a joint, they shared some very intimate moments here of like what it meant when Logan came out versus what, Lupe's fears are. And now shit, then she stole Sonny's mom's car. They are stranded.
Right. So they have to make their way to a party. I mean, this is another texture thing, right? Like this is like totally like grungy, like this is like a totally grungy, drugged up party, right?
Yeah, it feels like an abandoned farmhouse that they end up walking to. But the key part going into this scene, though, I think, is because at what point do you have to have, at a certain point in every teen, especially like a buddy road trip movie, you have to have where the buddies are at each other's throats and the friendship is on edge. They're kind of breaking up almost, but now they have no car, and I think they do find my phone because one of their phones is in the van. So they know where they're going, but they have to walk there. But now you have to walk there with like kind of almost your former best friend because you're so pissed at the other person right now.
But so here's my question about this. I mean, one, this is a rote thing to do to have that conflict there, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it works, but I'm going to ask if it works because part of it is I believe that they're angry at each other, and I don't believe they've broken up for a second because their friendship has been built so strongly in the film that when there's you're not a good friend or you're not a good friend or you pushed me into doing this, I think that's supposed to bring out actual tensions in a relationship. I just think they're just mad at each other because they're upset. Like maybe the screenwriters meant for those to be moments of tension. Like you pressured me into having the party. I didn't even want it. It's like, yeah, but I don't even believe that. This whole movie is built up to, no, you two are so bonded that, yeah, she pushed you into doing this, but you didn't mind. I mean, it made you very uncomfortable and there are things you did that you didn't want to do. I mean, this is the case, Sonny being pushed into like having this party, but I believe that they are temporarily mad at each other and you don't actually need a conversation to end that. They just in a couple hours, they'd be fine.
No, I'm actually with you. I was being too glib with my characterization of that. You're right. Like I didn't think that was going to be the end of their. It's that point you hit in the story where you're like add a little bit more tension. Okay, what else could be happening? It's now we're in the middle of a serious fight.
Right. If anything, it mildly detracts from the movie for me. Not because I don't think you can have that scene, but because it's like I think you meant for me to believe it, and this the ability the sort of the level of chemistry just overwhelms the attempt at creating tension there. It's just like fine.
Well, I still think it's a really great stroke of like it's a really great narrative choice that the screenwriters made at this point, because I think what you need to get out of their fight in the parking lot is Sonny takes the random pill that might be PCP.
Right.
It's like she's at her lowest point. She's having a fight with her friend. She's like, God, fuck it. She's like, okay, I just need this to end. Okay, I'm using the safety net. I'm taking this pill.
Part of it is there's a right. You have what 24-hour window, 48 tops, but like a 24-hour window to get this pill. Right. That's it.
There's literally a ticking clock going throughout this movie.
There's a ticking clock going throughout this movie. You've and they've had to slow down overnight because Planned Parenthood isn't going to be open. So that's why the whole sort of Logan and going to the show thing can happen. But yes, obviously it's not a Plan P pill. It's a
that wouldn't be funny, like we said before. Now you have to be, you're going to this like crazy after party in this abandoned farmhouse, or seemingly abandoned. Like,
and it's speed, yeah.
And wow, man, the performance here was I just thought like just spot on physical comedy. Sonny, like throughout this entire scene here, but also like she's going into a scene full of people that are bombed out of their minds on who knows what variety of substances. So in a way, she ends up fitting right in.
Oh yeah, it actually works pretty well.
Yeah, but because Lupe now is like usually the boisterous, outgoing one. She is, she's there. She's like, oh fuck, and she turns around like Sonny's gone. She's like, God damn it! Like I lost my friend. I know she's on drugs now. God, I just don't want to be here at all. Also because she thinks that her crush Logan just stole the car, which turns out the band leader is actually also on a bunch of drugs and was freaking out. So Logan went to like find him, and she was trying to text Lupe, but phone is in the van, so Lupe wasn't getting any of these texts. Right. So Logan's cool. It's all good now.
So yeah, so Logan's cool. There's some tension there. They get chased around by the very bad tripping, like
Xander, isn't it?
Xander, sort of the lead singer, who eventually, like, they accidentally hit with a car, and then that sort of sobers him up a bit, and he's just sort of like, whoops, I'm sorry.
Classic sober up trick, hit yourself with the car.
But this is also where Sonny, well, very high, gets basically Lupe gets out of the closet there, just as without any ceremony to it, right? So like their actual
it's just Logan can be also she's high, so
she's completely high, so
there's no freak out scene there, and it's just kind of like on to the next thing, we got to find the keys or whatever.
So once they get into the van, which is sort of as they're the sort of final leg where they're going to get to Planned Parenthood, they have this is where they sort of make up in the sense of like everybody's sort of revealing all the secrets are revealed. Mm-hmm. And so for instance, Lupe was afraid that it would change their relationship, or that, like Sonny would be afraid of like having sleepovers with her, which is like it's just a non-issue, right? Like, no, like
I think these are legitimate questions that teens though would think of, which
absolutely.
It's so heartfelt. I think that's what really hit, because it wasn't done as like a plot contrivance, or it wasn't written like, it didn't seem like some adult wrote it like, this is how I think it would feel. Like it just feels so authentic.
Yeah, no, that's just it. It's like there's these real fears, and they sort of end the way you would expect, which is like, no, you're my best friend, and I really love you, and I love you too, and it's really heartfelt.
So good, so good. But also, it's a perfect emotional peak. I think like this is the emotional climax to the movie, I thought, for me, also just because I was crying, because I was like, yes, okay, they're together again. They know what's going on. They're fully themselves with each other again as best friends. They're there for each other. You need that emotional payoff in that scene, because the next scene is going to be them arriving at a now closed Planned Parenthood.
The point of making this movie and doing the plot around this, along with, Unpregnant and, a number of other movies around this time, is that we are in a period of savage attacks on women's reproductive health. And, this is a dead realistic scenario. And part of it is, the devastation of it is that they get there and the Planned Parenthood is closed. Permanently.
Yeah, it's permanently, gone. Yeah, not just for the day. Like there's a sign in the window, this location has been permanently closed.
Right. So like which is true. Large swaths of the country at this point, access to women's health is actually, it's incredibly difficult to get. And
also remember, they are in South Dakota.
Right. But that's what I mean, is in large swaths of the country, right? Like, this is it.
A ticking clock, and they're in South Dakota. This isn't like, oh, I'm in LA and this location closed early. Like, they are fucked.
Yeah, they're fucked. There's nowhere else to go. They don't really try any other drugstores. I wonder if that would work, but whatever. Doesn't matter. And this is, this is like sobbing on the pavement. I mean, this is where the structural power of, the overall structural power of, patriarchy and control over women's bodies comes crashing down, right?
Yeah. Because there's even like some remnants of like protest signs or flyers like in the parking lot around them. But it's, you're right. They just both collapse on the ground, hugging each other. What the fuck are we going to do?
So at this point, they drive back. I mean, basically, Sonny's like, I need my mom. She's been trying to hide.
Yeah.
Being not perfect, not living up to expectations or what have you, this whole time. And it's just, there's nothing else. I need my mom. There's nothing else I can do.
Okay. So that's a line, as a parent, that's a line that really hit me. When someone's just like mid sob, just like, I want my mom.
Okay.
Like
talk as a parent here. Yeah.
I'm just saying that hits. I mean, like she sold it, and you've seen enough of you've seen very little of the parent-child dynamics, but like it's so precisely portrayed in the opening scenes that you feel that. Because also, again, this is like on Sonny's perspective, she's an only child, and it's just her and her mom in the house,
right?
And like even if her mom can be overbearing, like that's still a very intense parent-child connection. And yeah, you're emotionally like lowest point. You'd be like, that totally rings true,
right?
And hurts. Because, the moral of the story really would be just talk to your parents. For these two, I don't know, if you have a horrible parent situation, that may not be an option for you. But for these two characters, this movie could have been 15 minutes long. I'm glad it's not. Because it's a hilarious and it's a great emotional ride to go on, along with so much laughter.
Isn't the motto actually parents need to create atmospheres where their kids feel like they can?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But I was with the teens in this case, not the parents. But yes,
yeah,
yes.
No, but because part of it is that's sort of what has to be dealt with. Like, go back and Sonny has to have a conversation where it's like, the reason I'm not telling you anything is because your expectations make it impossible.
Right.
And her mother basically has to say, this same thing happened with my mother. So part of it is like, it's the parents stop generations of fucking up your relationships with your kids.
Right.
By not being your parents and actually listening and letting your kids be human. Like that. So that's the thing with Sonny, right?
Right.
And then with Lupe, it's actually about basically confirming. Part of it is she has the very real fear. This is what happened to Logan, but also just all of her experience with her father is, if I come out, am I going to get kicked out of the house?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to lose my home?
Right.
And so, she has, I thought that was a devastating scene. That was really good.
Lupe and her dad, or with Logan, you mean?
Lupe and her dad.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Where her dad is like, you will have a place to live here if you kill somebody.
Right.
There's nothing you can do that you will not have a home here.
That one got me too.
It's really good. Yeah. Oh, same. And part of it is so she doesn't come out there, but she does have a rainbow pin on that Logan gave her.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. That's like the, what is it? Like the infinity rainbow pin. Yeah.
Right. And so her father says, nice pin, which is functionally coming out. And then her little brother's there and gives her a thumbs up because maybe he already knew, frankly. Yeah. It's very the siblings already knew.
Yeah. Well, but also that's what you were just saying with her dad. He then in the final scene, he creates a safe space for her.
Right. That's just it.
It's not actually, coming out right there. It's okay, I know this eventually when this happens, I'll be okay.
Right.
But like you said, also then he's like, hey, also parents, God, I did not believe this when I was a kid, but parents are more aware than their kids. Kids aren't aware how aware their parents can be. I'll put it that way.
I just thought parents just don't understand, right?
Sometimes they don't, but also
they know a little more of what's going on.
Yeah. Well, also, some parents are creating that space, hopefully, for their kids all the time as they've been growing up and don't need their kids to grow up to not be their parents. Maybe some parents are creating good parent role models for their kids to emulate once they become parents. Sorry, a little inward there. It's an aspiration,
but basically, both of these are scenes where I think the parents. It's made clear that that the parents are actually capable of doing this.
Yes.
But they have to be put in a position to do it because they have part of the reason the entire plot of this movie happens is because neither of the kids felt safe talking about their lives.
Right.
And both of them, these are both sort of structural issues. And then we get our hilarious Plan B scene. We do.
Which is it's such a great payoff on a couple of jokes. Because then when Lupe and Sonny, they both go to the pharmacy because they're still friends and then they're in it together. So it's not just Sonny and her mom going to the pharmacy now. Lupe's still there with her because they're best friends. They're in it together, as they've been saying this whole time. But then her mom asks for the Plan B pill, but then specifically says it's for her daughter's friend.
Which is the lie that they originally told.
So now mom's in on the lie, but also because we mentioned before, Sonny mentions the pharmacist as part of the Indian mafia, as she calls it, in her town, and knows her mom. Her mom is still kind of, well, we do have to save face, I guess. So
I don't know if that's what's happening there because she's being really threatening. She's part of it is she's furious that they were denied in the first place.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. No, that's a huge component. I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, she is.
Do what with you? But also she doesn't go in and then own it because I need this for my daughter. It's still your passing the buck. But I think more was like a comedic bit. I thought happened in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's a comedic bit because she's not bad. I mean, she's taking him to task for not doing this immediately.
Oh, I didn't read that. Oh, see, I see what you're saying. That totally makes sense. Like she's doing it almost to mock him. Like, hey, I know what you did before.
Yes. No, she's furious with him. Okay, she's intimidating. Right. She's intimidating him because the thing is, the scene right before is, wait, what? He did what?
Right, you're right.
And then they go
like
in
protective mom mode.
Yeah, she goes into protective mom mode, and that this would ever have been an issue, and how the fuck dare you be this, disrespectful to
my daughter,
to my daughter and her friend, and I'm just going to go in there and like crush them.
Wow.
And
heard that scene.
And then the final scene is like all of them together.
Yeah,
like in the car, like all three of them. So it's that's
it's beautiful.
Yes, it is. And the final gag involves a penis ring, and we didn't even explain where that came from.
Well, we mentioned the full frontal male nudity, which, you know what, for one, refreshing to see.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is the thing.
I mean, it's disgusting and gross because there's a giant, hoop piercing at the head of it. That hurt to see. But, it's about time we saw more dicks on screen.
That's just it, right? Like nudity. I'm actually for more nudity in film as long as it's like, equal time.
Well, if that's the case, we're going to have like 10 years of like dicks on screen before we can catch up with
10 years.
Every scene for the next 10 years has to have male frontal nudity. Period.
Right. You're going to need 20 years of
Pixar. Start redoing whatever movie you're working on. It's got to have a dick in it.
I mean, think about, just decades and decades of.
Yeah.
No, this is a really good movie. And I think it's a really good example of sort of a contemporary, sort of like very political, but very funny, topical film that fits into our environment, to the hellscape that we live in today.
So in my head, as I was watching it, some of the beats it was hitting, I was like, oh my gosh, this is such, and I wrote in my film notebook too. I was like, God, this is an amazing post Booksmart movie, comedy, teen comedy.
Right.
And it really hadn't occurred to me. I know we did Booksmart as like a practice podcast episode when we were like kind of talking through, hey, do you think this format would work? So that's never going to be heard. But we talked about Booksmart extensely together, both because also we worked at the theater it was playing at the time, and because we were doing some practice episode on it. But I didn't realize how strong a grasp that movie had on my film brain. That those were the terms I was using in my head as I was watching this movie.
Yeah, that's actually the judge that's how we understand teen movies today.
Yeah, the great ones. Or I don't know, the ones I'm enjoying at least, but yeah. Well, because it easily could have been like, Never Going Back, or there's something else. Because like that's a great like female buddy road movie as well. But like my brain didn't go there; it went to Booksmart because like the friendship dynamic was just so similar, and also around the high school environment and all that other stuff too. But
so I guess part of it is though that this is a movie. This is a micro budget movie. It's now on Hulu. Booksmart underperformed. So what is it? What are the teen movie in this sense actually is not like the form that these things take. I mean, I think what teens are getting out from the library at least.
Yeah. I mean, no, they're not taking movies out.
They're not taking movies out because they're streaming them.
Yeah.
But I get, part of it is like, what place does the teen movie have in our culture? Right. Because part of it is like, I was a teenager when American Pie came out. Right. And that, and like even the 80s John Hughes movies had a deep effect on what a teen was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Now, obviously TV has a huge amount of effect of it. I don't know if these movies are more reflections of their times than shaping their times.
It was also a different era where more of a generation was like watching John Hughes. It's like that was like a shared cinematic world. Within those movies. Whereas now, like, I think there's TikTok influencers, or there's TikTok channels and personalities that have more influence over like my daughter's sense of self and what a teen, or tween in her case. Well, she's just now 12. So yeah, tween in her case, what that means.
Right.
So she'll reference stuff and like, I don't know what that is. And she'll have to show me, 3 or 4 posts from some specific, she does hula hoops. So it's always like some dancer or hula hoop artist. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what you mean. Okay, that's that person.
But that's what I mean. So like part of it's films like this are less influenced in the landscape than like film basically is not in terms of in terms of teen entertainment, film is not leading off. Film is it's in there, and it's more of the object than the. I guess I'm thinking. I have no idea because I'm not a teenager and have.
I mean, if you're going to rank them, like it's probably not even in the top 5, at least in my limited experience as a young adult librarian, and also having a 14-year-old and 12-year-old.
Yeah, so. Probably not even top 5. Probably considerably lower than that. I mean, mind you, yeah. So I just it's just a sort of interesting reflection. I hope people watch this. I hope teens watch this movie.
I mean, some do. I'm sure. I mean, there's buddy and film geeks that are of that age that it would be watching this, and they'd be going to this movie the way I was constantly rewatching, like, A Dazed and Confused or American Graffiti or something. I was a weird kid watching.
Yeah, those are not the. Those were nostalgia. What's really funny about pairing those two is one is a 70s movie that's nostalgia for the 50s, and the other one is a 90s movie that's nostalgia for the 70s.
Right.
But neither of them are for teenagers.
But those shaped my teen worldview when I was growing up. So I don't know. I guess I was the esoteric nature of film influences for me is probably about the same as it is for my kids at this point. Then,
yes.
But anyway, yeah, no, it's. As you mentioned earlier too, like I was kind of placing this also because I just because Sundance is virtual right now. I've been watching some documentaries out of Sundance, and one of them I watched was this fantastic one called The Janes. It's about an underground group of women in Chicago in the late 60s, early 70s when abortions were illegal, and got all the hoops for like getting the pill or a diaphragm. Like it, women's sexual reproductive health in that time period. I was like, I can't. It's so just. It's mind-boggling to me. Anyway, this group, though, they put together their own underground network to provide as safe as they could get abortions for women, knowing that it was illegal. And they're interviewing them now, and they have all this archival footage of them, and they go through the whole procedures and the processes and how they did it and how revolutionary that was. And I thought, well, you're putting that documentary together in 2020, or it's coming out in 2022. So, like, you've been putting it together over the last year. There's a fictional version of that called Ask Jane, that I didn't see, but it was also playing at Sundance, that I think Elizabeth Banks plays one of the Janes. So like there's a fictional version of it. There's the documentary version of it. There's one from a couple of years ago called Ask for Jane. There's the one you mentioned, Isaac, earlier during the show. But in the last couple of years, like I'm glad that in the documentary sense, like now that's there, that's captured, that's a cultural artifact for, this documentary, The Janes, that we can go to experience some, vicarious, not fully experienced, but like you can have some empathy with what the situation was in that time period. But like all you keep thinking is like, well, fuck, we're on the road back to that.
Right. I mean, that's why these are being, I think these are why these movies are being made. I mean, why these documentaries and things are being made now.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely.
Is because, you're trying to galvanize, you're trying to whatever. I mean, it's.
Oh, The Janes for sure does that. Because I was like, I had no idea all of the hoops. Like they make a casual comment about how in order to go get the pill, you had to be married. It was like up till somewhere in the 60s, I forget. So women or friend groups would just pass around like a ring that they would just put on to go fill out paperwork and be like, oh, I'm sorry, my husband's out of town. Or like all these like hoops and lies they had to jump through. You're like, Jesus Christ.
Remember, I mean, women don't have full property rights functionally until like you're getting the 70s and the 80s. I mean, like, I think the slope, this stuff is really important to realize. I mean, this is the sort of thing that will come up when you're talking about the civil rights movement, where somebody will point out, it's like, no, that's my grandma. This is not ancient history. Even now, 60 years later is not that long ago, or what have you, or 50 years later.
My mom was a teenager during this whole period I was just talking about there with the Jane, like late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah. So was my mom, and she she was involved in these struggles in the 80s. So I think it's this contextualization. This stuff disappears from view unless you can contextualize it.
Yeah. No, I mean it's an interesting. I'm glad that documentary was made. It's just, I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, it sucks that we're in an atmosphere where it feels like we need to create this kind of art to get these dialogues going. Cause like, fuck, we are not going back to this right here. No, not doing that. Sorry. That was about the Janes, not about Plan B. Although, Plan B is clearly making its own statement too of like, I don't know. How do we want to wrap this up with reading like the final statement? If that this is making about the current situation. So there is the Planned Parenthood scene. You do have the end scene where, the mom is able to go and get the pill, the Plan B pill for her daughter. but like without the stupid moral clause, like that would have already been a thing that her daughter got already, and we don't have this wacky adventure.
I mean, I think this is a movie that shows the complexity of the moment of struggle that we're in. So you have a film in which even potential sexual violence and racism is endemic, and patriarchal structures have limited off the capacity of women to control their bodies. Mm-hmm. At the same time that victories of past generations and ongoing victories for like queer communities are like showing themselves openly as well. Mm-hmm. So it's the very divided moment that we're actually in. I think reflected in film.
Absolutely. It's no, very, very well said, which is weird. Like all of that complexity, I think, is very well reflected and represented in this particular movie, but also it's just a flat out hilarious comedy.
I know we sort of kill it by going scene by scene and me talking about Dread and then, you know, giving like the political point of the movie. And it's like, yeah, but it's actually really funny.
I mean, yes and no. I think knowing some of the ins and outs of what it's doing with character development and how each scene is kind of structured, I don't think that spoils any of the jokes, because also I don't think we're retelling the jokes or explaining the jokes very well or that often,
right?
Based on the nature of what we were focusing on. So I hopefully it really enhances the comedic experience here. Although I guess we are kind of representing it not in the right genre terms, I guess.
Yes,
but you know, it's all there though. Like I think that's what makes it kind of brilliantly structured and written.
Yeah, actually. It's all there, and it's not subtle. But the movie's called Plan B. So,
right.
You know, subtlety is not always necessary or the best choice. So even though this is coming out in February, which will technically be Black History Month, we are going to do Black History Month this month. We're going to try to keep everything. Maybe our time scale will be a little off in general, but we're going to do what we do.
We'll get there.
So like last year, we're going to be looking at great films, great auteur filmmaking, and films by Black directors and creators in general. And we're starting with Charles Burnett's masterpiece, Killer of Sheep.
Well, we're saying masterpiece, Isaac, but I've never watched this one.
Yeah, but I have complete confidence. Actually, I haven't watched it either. I've been really wanting to watch this for a really long time. But I've watched some of his other movies, some of Charles Burnett's other movies, and I don't have any doubt about saying that right off the bat.
Oh, no, I don't either. I'm completely comfortable with you saying that. I just, I don't know. I internally chuckled a little bit because I was like, neither one of us have seen this. What if we, I don't know, be an interesting show.
What if we really don't like it?
God, what a mess. What was he thinking?
I mean, part of it. So I watched my brother's wedding last year. And
we did several Friends on the show before, his one of his student shorts.
Well, I remember because I think we've talked about this before since then, but I think we might have talked about it last year around this time, is because we did several Friends as part of the 60s stuff in the summer of 2020. And part of our main reaction was, wait, this is a student film? Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I just, the thing about like my brother's wedding is, here's this movie that feels like it's almost pure amateur. No, no sets, no nothing, like micro budget. Everything feels in a certain sense sort of stilted. And when you're done with it, you feel like you've watched a perfect movie.
Interesting.
He's just that good.
That good. No, I'm really looking forward to it because it's one of those, like, I just needed the push, like, hey, watch this fucking movie. Do it. So that's what this is going to do for us. And when, so officially, I was going to say I didn't realize I've seen one Charles Burnett feature in my life, because in the 90s I was a gigantic Ice Cube fan. I wasn't into like the NWA, but when Ice Cube went off on his own, I was like, oh shit, here we go. And then he started acting, Friday, everything else. I was like, all right, this guy's great. So I saw a movie called The Glass Shield with Ice Cube in the theaters, actually. And when I was looking up Killer of Sheep, I'm like, okay, I had to have seen some other Charles Burnett. I'm like, Charles Burnett did The Glass Shield? That's crazy. Because I don't remember it being that great, but it was an interesting era of Black filmmaking in the mid-90s as well. But we will be focusing on 1978's Killer of Sheep next time. But before we sign off, be sure to rate and review the show in whatever podcast app you are using. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend or two about it. We're up and running on the usual social media nonsense. Check the show notes. We have links going for all of that stuff. And until next time, I am Aaron.
I'm Isaac, and I'm saying stay safe out there. And if you're working in a Starbucks right now and you're getting unionized like dozens of other Starbucks locations, all solidarity in the world. It's amazing. You give us hope.